James, you worked at the ONS, you held senior positions there, you were a member of the European Parliament on the Brexit cause for a period of time. But let's talk statistics. 1,000 excess deaths a week.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite sobering, isn't it, Nigel? And I think the way I would describe the establishment and their sort of trying to explain these figures is a little bit like a sick, demented Christmas pantomime, where they're pointing everywhere, and there's plenty of us saying it's over there. And, you know, these excess deaths have been going on since May. Like you said, it averages out about 1,000 a week.
Yeah, I look at these figures every week, and I try to ignore it to begin with, but you can't now, can you, after 8 months?
Well, the thing is, I think the reason we can't ignore it is because it's across all age groups, and particularly in the young. We're seeing 10 to 15% excess deaths in the age group between 24 and 59. And when you dig down into the data, it's actually heart attacks, heart conditions that are causing these deaths. And as I said, you know, when you listen to what the establishment is saying, it's all muddled. So,
OK, let's just deal with the numbers.
Yeah.
Right? So just repeat that figure, because this is not an arguable statistic. Young men up to the age of 59, increase in heart deaths.
Yeah, young men and women, by the way, although I think it's slightly higher for men. But yeah, between the age, I mean, that's the most worrying, because I think, you know, it spans all.
Just give us a go.
Yeah, so basically we've got an excess deaths, an average of around 1,000 a week. It comes out around 10%, give or take a few percentage. And this is consistent week on week since May. So it's been going on for a long time now. There's something going on there that poses a question. This isn't just an anomaly. This is something that's happening. And we had the British Heart Foundation before Christmas. First of all, they were putting it down to delays in ambulance times. Well, I mean, that's all very well, but that doesn't explain why people at that age group who, you know, we haven't seen this before, are having heart attacks in the first place. So that's number one. Then we had Chris Whitty about a week ago.
He said the reason for this was that because of COVID, people weren't getting diagnosed.
Well, it was a bit more detailed than that. So he suggested that people who had missed their GP regular health checkups, whatever that is. I mean, who has, especially young men and young women in the age group between 24 and 50, how many of them have regular health checkups with their GP? But anyway, he said because they've missed their health checkups, conditions have been missed and they're maybe not on statins or blood pressure. Now, you know, you can explain maybe a little bit of a movement on the dial, but you can't explain 1,000 a week from that. It's ridiculous. To be honest with you, it's an insult to our intelligence. And there's no evidence to back it up. Just the same with the British Heart Foundation as well. That's the important thing. They're just making speculations and there's no evidence to back it up.
Now, you're suggesting, James, that a contributory factor to this death of young men and women through heart conditions are side effects from the vaccine.
I'm posing the question. There is a question mark here that the government, and they need to look at. We need an inquiry into this. This has been going on since May now. These are young, healthy people that are dying. And at the moment, it seems the government, all they're doing is scrabbling around and, like I said, just sort of saying, well, it might be this or it might be that. I think this is serious enough now that they need some kind of independent public inquiry, because, you know, if you back out from all of this, there is data emerging across the world now which is showing a link between the vaccines, particularly the mRNA vaccines, and heart issues. And, you know, I've got no trust in the government, because when you look at what happened with the AstraZeneca vaccine, that was quietly withdrawn back in 2021. Now, European countries withdrew it in March. Our government dragged its feet and it quietly took it off the market in about June, July. There was no announcement. There's been no investigation into terms of...
OK, but I mean, let's face a fact. You know, whether it's tuberculosis or, you know, diphtheria or whatever it is, you know, we know that all vaccines, unfortunately, have side effects for a very small percentage of people. We know that, and we've lived with that for many, many generations. Is there a counter-argument that Mr. Whitty could put that says, look at China, that has an ineffective vaccine, people are dying in large numbers. Yes, some people have suffered, you know, heart problems, but maybe the vaccine saved a huge number of lives.
OK, well, to answer that question, we need to go to the gold standard of evidence, which is actually randomised controlled trials. And if you look back at the Pfizer data, it's crazy that more people don't know this. When you they've reanalysed the Pfizer data, and it actually shows in their data, which is the gold standard, that the vaccines do more harm than they do protect people. That's there for people.
Is that for young people?
That's there for all age groups, but it gets more significant as you get younger. but it's certainly true of people in their 70s as well. The thing that the latest statistic which they've analysed from that data is that adverse reactions, whether they're straight after the vaccine or we're seeing heart issues developing months afterwards, is 1 in 800.
Okay. Now, 1,000 a week. Excess deaths nationally, 1,000 a week. Unarguable figure. Does perhaps this accident and emergency statement that we have had in the last 24 hours of maybe 300 to 500 a week, is that part of the explanation?
Yeah, well, of course it is. I mean, the NHS has been on its knees for, 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
We've got a crisis every year. When people are not getting beds and we're running out of oxygen, of course, that is contributing to excess deaths at the moment. But that doesn't explain, like I said, the problem is with all of this is we've got these two things, and I think people are trying to muddy the waters in between.
Okay. And I get your point.
Yeah.
I get your point that a government that has pushed the vaccine as hard as it is doesn't want to admit any harm at all, even if statistically it's a tiny number of people. It's still a significant number of people. James, you've called for a public inquiry. What form would that take?
Needs to be an independent one, I think, definitely, because pharma has an awful lot of influence, far too much influence over our regulators. The MHRA, I think it's around 70, might even be as high as 80% of their funding comes from pharma.
Yeah.
We know that universities are funded and politicians are influenced and lobbies by big pharma. So it needs to be independent, number one. There is another question as well, actually, from my old employer, the Office for National Statistics. Up until July, they were publishing all-cause mortality statistics by vaccination status. They suddenly stopped doing that in July. They haven't explained why. They've been asked publicly. And that data, believe it or not, because they can link that to things like statins, to things like heart conditions, that would give us an awful lot more information. So why have they stopped publishing that data? They've not come out with an explanation.
No, it's a fair question.
Yeah.
It's a fair question. James, thank you. And folks at home, I don't know whether James is right or wrong, but he is right to ask questions about this. And I would suggest to you that now this has been going on consistently for the last 8 to 9 months, 1,000 extra people dying every week is something I would have thought well worthy of an investigation. And we'll find out, hopefully, how much of it is because of failures of ambulances, of A&E, of misdiagnoses, and how many young men and women have suffered heart attacks as a byproduct of the vaccine. I don't know the answers to any of this. I would suggest what you've heard just now statistically demands an investigation. Give me your thoughts. Farage at gbnews.uk.